My name is Dennis Chupp. I'm founder and owner of Chupp's Piano Service. We were founded in 1975. And today I'd like to give you a brief history of our business and how we started. My father was a carpenter. He built houses. He was a cabinet maker. He was one of those guys that could fix anything. I have 6 siblings, so there were 7 children in our family. I guess he needed to be able to fix everything. He was a wonderful man, and I spent my early life with him. I was very close to him. I worked with him. He taught me woodworking skills. My father was such a wonderful carpenter and woodworker. My interest was always piqued. I always wanted to help him, work with him. When I went to school, I took many years of woodworking classes to hone my skills. My mother was a violinist. I remember going to the concerts to see my mother play in the symphony orchestra. So when I was 17, I met a man that was a piano tuner. I was actually at that time trying to decide what career I would go into, whether it would be building, auto mechanics. I loved fixing things like my father. But there was a man I met that was a piano tuner, and he began to train me, and immediately I saw that this is what I wanted to make as my career. After about a year of working with Wade, he moved away. I was really at a loss, and I thought, what am I going to do now? I need training. I don't know anybody in the field. I mentioned this to my mother, and she said, well, I know the local concert piano tuner. So she said, I'll call him and have him come and tune our home piano. So a couple weeks later, a man named Walter Bossart showed up. He was about 63 years old, and he tried to tune the piano, but I had so many questions for him. I knew just enough to be dangerous, and the poor guy was in our home for about 4.5 hours. It should only take about an hour and a half to tune a piano. And he actually left, went home, ate supper, and came back and spent another couple hours in our home. I think more in desperation than anything, he said, well, why don't you come over to my shop? If you have this many questions, come over next Saturday and we'll talk. Well, that was the beginning of a 10-year apprenticeship with Walter Bossart. Walter Bossart was a man who had a lot of knowledge in the piano industry. He actually helped bring the 2 organizations together into one that now has become the Piano Technicians Guild. Originally that was 2 organizations. He helped unite that. He was very well connected in the piano industry, piano field. One of Walter's friends was Ed Hendricks. Ed Hendricks was the Steinway dealer in the Chicago area in the early 1970s and mid-70s. Ed had been the head of marketing at Steinway for 3.5 years. Ed was responsible with Walter Bossart for arranging for me to go to the Steinway factory in 1981 to have advanced training. Since Ed had been at the Steinway factory, he became good friends with Freddie Dresch. Freddie Dresch started with Steinway when he was 16 years old. Later he became the head service representative for the Steinway factory. In his semi-retired years, Freddie Dresch would travel around the United States and give advanced training in tone regulation and piano technology to technicians across the country. Anytime Freddie came to the Chicago area to visit his friend Ed, Ed would invite me to come in and get one-on-one personal training with Freddie. It was a great privilege and a great honor. Freddie Dresch was a very colorful character. He was an amazing storyteller. He would be training us, or training me personally, and we were often so distracted from what we were doing because his stories were so fascinating. Freddie was responsible for most of the design of Vladimir Horowitz's touring piano. Freddie rubbed shoulders with many artists like Horowitz and Arthur Rubinstein, knew them on a first-name basis, and they highly respected him, and he respected them. So as I worked with him, one day I brought in a Steinway apron, and I said, "Freddie, would you sign my shop apron?" I have the apron here, and Freddie signed it, his name, Fred Dresch, 1985. When he signed this, he got halfway through autographing it, and he looked over at me and he said, "You know, a few years from now, somebody's going to look at that and they're going to say, 'Who the heck is Fred Dresch?'" That's just the kind of humor he had. He was a wonderful trainer. He would not be easy on you. He'd really put you through the paces, but he was a very likable guy, and his stories were hilarious. After learning the tuning part of the business, I then began to learn the rebuilding part of the piano, and then the refinishing of the cabinet. There are roughly 12,000 parts that go together to make a piano. 8,000 of those parts are in the action. The piano is a very complicated instrument. It's interesting that it hasn't changed for well over 100 years as far as basic design. Piano rebuilding is really three businesses in one. There's the exterior cabinet refinishing, which is very, very labor intensive, as all piano rebuilding is. Then there's the part we call the belly, which is the soundboard, the strings, the pin block, the cast iron plate. And then the third part is the action, or the keyboard. Recently, we were able to add on this beautiful showroom to our state-of-the-art rebuilding facility. This room really is a dream come true, especially for our clients. We can allow them to come in here. We turn them loose. They can go from piano to piano. They can choose from as many as 30 pianos, mostly Steinways, and really pick out the piano of their dreams. We want to make sure that they're very comfortable with their selection, because it's a piano they're probably going to have the rest of their life. We here at Chupp's Piano Service are passionate about excellence and quality. We also are firm believers in continuing the art of piano technology.